This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Here now, Tony Bruschi.
This is someone who was supposed to go get help. He was diagnosed with a borderline personality disorder. We've talked about that a gazillion times. If anybody who listens to the show knows, he had PTSD. He was diagnosed with a sloth of other things. And he didn't go get any help. There's no proof or knowledge that we know that he was taking his meds or on his meds. We know he did not go to the counseling sessions he was supposed to go to. Not that, a couple of them is going to do a whole lot for somebody with this severe of problems. But at the end of the day, he's living out of his truck. And the court is still saying, yeah, you should go have parental rights to go be with these 3 little girls. Again, it's just, what the hell is going on here? The bar is so low to have to be able to be with your kids just because there's this romanticized idea that every parent just loves their kids unconditionally and la la la. No, they don't. Yeah. No. Ultimately, the biggest safeguard that we have in this broken system, because of everything you just described, we don't have the staffing, we don't have the child welfare dollars that they need to do their job and to not get burned out and to be effective, and solutions for these kids in these situations. So you got a judge that at the end of the day is kind of the last safeguard there, that could have made a call saying, no, until you actually show that you followed through on these directives, you don't get to see your kids. But no, it's like, we need you to go do that. And in the meantime, you can keep seeing them. It's great. And there's no follow-up. There's no enforcing of anything. Yeah. And what you're left with is mom who's sitting here with this partner who is so damaged mentally. And they're showing up for visitation. They're showing up to take the kids. Her hands are tied. She calls the police. What would happen?
Yeah, very likely the police, if there's this court order, the police are obligated to allow what's in the court order to happen. Yeah. And the other horrible piece of this is for a parent to fight something like this and to say, you know what, he hasn't followed up with therapy, he hasn't done what he's supposed to do. She has to hire an attorney. Yeah. To go back into court. And God knows, anybody who's been through the divorce court, you're talking thousands and thousands of dollars, and often they want 10 grand up front before they'll even take a case like this. Mm-hmm. And that's simply not something that most people can do.
So we rely on the piece of paper. The piece of paper that doesn't get updated as the person's not doing what the piece of paper says they're supposed to be doing, and then that piece of paper is left for the officer out in the field that day who's working 30 other things to try and figure this out and go, well, the paper says it's and they're doing their job too, because there's people who just make things up as well. There's people who will use child custody as a way to try and incriminate the other parent, even if they're doing nothing wrong. So the officers have to figure out, well, which one is legit, where they're not safe, and which one is safe. So their hands are tied. But you had the judge who saw all of this stuff, who saw all the evidence and still said, yep, you're safe. There's no repercussions for these bad choices of these judges. No. And I don't know what, should there be? Should there start to be something like that in place? I mean, I don't know how you would make that work of all the judges that make bad decisions, because eventually you're going to make some bad ones being a judge just by sheer numbers.
It sure feels like that would be the moral thing to do, is some kind of consequences when, I think they would be a lot more careful if there were some kind of consequences for it.
But even beyond consequences, why don't we just have basic rules here? You need to have a place that you live other than a vehicle. Yeah. If you're going to have unsupervised visitation rights with your children, because chances are, if you don't have that, there's something wrong.
There's something very wrong. Yeah. But the horrifying thing is that people who are living in their cars have full custody of their children in many cases, or they're living under the bridge in a tent. Yeah. And you've got a whole community of families living like that with children in their custody. And this is just horrendous.
We allow it. I mean, why do we allow this? I mean, other than we have no other options, because that kind of feels like that is why we have a society where this is okay. And I mean, I know it's always existed to a certain extent, but to the extent we have it today and I know you see it where you are, with the tent communities and such, where it's like, oh, this is like, and it's protected in a certain ways too. Like, it's a lifestyle choice. It's not a lifestyle choice. There's mental illness amongst like 99% of the folks out there. They need help.
Yeah.
They're not going to get it on their own by people dropping off food or money and then, hey, good luck back at the tent. That's not going to fix it.
Yeah.
Why do we do this? Why are we here?
It just goes back to, I think the system is confused. It's inefficient. And you do see, I think, in different communities, different levels of involvement. I know where I used to live in California, I had a practice largely centered on children for a while, and I would get lots of referrals from child welfare. And they would be these cases where, one parent, the better parent, had been given custody, and the parent who had the problems had lost custody, was trying to reunify. And so I was one of the people that they would send the child to and then do these sessions, including the parent, to see how is this parent doing. And there was one case in particular that the child had been horrendously neglected and abused and had done well, placed with his father. The mother was the one that had wounded him. And I saw that little boy for 5 years and wrote many letters to the court, which we are now discouraged from doing. It's considered, unethical for us to stick our toes in and write letters to the court.
So the person who has like the most expertise in the actual situation, in the mental health, which is what is at question, we don't want to hear from you.
Yeah. So we were discouraged from doing that, but I was doing it at the time. And I consistently said, this parent is not making progress in treatment. They don't have the capacity to make progress in treatment. Again, it was the borderline cluster B diagnosis. And after about 5 years, and she spent gazillions of dollars on a very aggressive attorney. And after about 5 years, she got an unsupervised weekend a month with the child where she could take him to her home. And she had checked the boxes off with the parenting classes and, other things. And the first weekend she had the child, she was driving drunk and plowed into the back of a semi-truck. And of course, the child was killed immediately in a horrifying way. And she was fine. She walked away from the accident. And I went to that funeral for that little boy. And I think that was about the time I said, I just can't do this work anymore. I couldn't do work with kids in those situations because I was haunted by that case. I dreamed of him for years, and it's a mess.
The rights seem to be there to protect the abusive parent. More than anything else. It's
more than the child.
More than the child, more than the parent that is being responsible and is giving healthy love and attention. It's protecting the abuser. And that's why do courts today, as you mentioned, why do they not want the opinion of the psychologist? That to me, because there's another voice involved, or the judge doesn't want to be questioned, because it's like, if you want to do this, you're the instruction manual basically on this kid. You're the one who knows them in an objective way more than a parent who can give objective opinion on this to a judge to make educated decisions. Why do they not want to hear your opinion?
I think this was a confusing one. There were certainly cases where you had clinicians who had biases, and they were not appointed by the court. They were just working privately or with, as I got referrals from the Department of Social Services. And so the ethics boards over therapists because there were problems with biases. And they came out and said, if you are not a court-appointed evaluator, meaning you have very special training and work within parameters and do psych testing, if you are not a court-appointed evaluator, you need to keep your nose out of it because you guys, meaning unregulated therapists out there, you're all over the place. So I think it was more the licensing boards that tried to crack down on it and just said, if you're not a court-appointed evaluator, stay out of it. But I don't think we have enough court-appointed evaluators. I don't think they're often utilized adequately. And sometimes if there is one, they will talk to the treating therapist and include that information in their reports. So it can get in there, but I don't think it's often enough.
There's not a good, healthy path for it to be there, as that should be a checkbox on its own. What does the evaluation say?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the key part of all of this.
Yeah.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Bruschi and the Hidden Killers podcast.